So what are we chatting about today?
What do you want to talk about? Oh, business.
Business.
Yeah. Business in general, how to scale, what you need to scale, what KPIs to track. Okay. Let's talk about starting a new business, should we? From the start?
Well, that's like what I'm going through right now, so it's top of mind for me.
Cool. So, when you're starting a new business, what do you think the 4 first things you should be tracking are? What do you think the 4 biggest KPIs are that you can track in the beginning of a business?
I mean, it's got to be something around like lead generation or income producing activities, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's
What
no right or wrong, but
yeah, I think you got to start with lead measures. That's like the most perfect time to understand. I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to have a vision, right? Hopefully, that's like step number 1. You understand like where you're trying to get to, what the finish line looks like. And then you need to reverse engineer it and say, okay, well, what are the activities I need to do to get there? And then you build a process and a system to ensure that we're consistent in those activities. But the question for you is like, how does someone know what they are? How does someone know which activities to pick? I'm sure it's going to be very custom to each person, but if you had to give a brand new business owner some advice, how would they know which KPIs to track, which metrics to go after at first?
I think the biggest thing in the beginning is like how you're going to create revenue. So revenue first position is always the main component that you need to like keep your eye on. And you can build out systems and processes all day long, but they're not going to help create revenue. And what are you building out a system or process for if you don't have
Right.
revenue and clients to manage, right? That's the whole point of a system or a process.
Yeah.
So how I think everybody needs to identify what the easiest way is that they can create revenue, how they connect with people. Some people it's cold calling, and that's how they connect because they're really good at
Mhm.
scripts and they can flip people. And other people are good in person, for example, right? There's like a million ways that you could do lead generation.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
how do you identify what your key lead generation key components are, the top 3?
I think it's a really good place to bring up the concept of like Pareto's principle, like
Mm-hmm.
80/20, um, like Lencioni's genius zone. Like there's a lot of uh, directions you can go here, but I think it's really important to understand 2 key things. Number 1, what are you good at? Like, what's your core competency as a business owner? Right? A lot of people, especially in our world, like real estate, where we come from, are really good marketers and entrepreneurs, and they're great at like putting themselves out there. Some people are like me, an extremely almost like dysfunctional level introvert that is terrified of people, and I want to be behind the computer building out the systems and processes. Now, spoiler alert, as an entrepreneur, you're going to have to do it all at some point. But really, what you want to be clear of, in the beginning at least, is what are you best at? Where is your time best suited, right? Where can you have the most impact? Because that's going to be your 20%. It's what's going to give you the most joy, give you the most energy. You're going to provide the most value to your company. And then the 80%, that's the stuff where we either need to sort of bite the bullet in the beginning or we can systematize and delegate it. There's a lot of different directions we can go, but you want to be clear on what you're good at and what you're not. Then, once you've identified your genius, your core competency, we need to say, okay, what are the activities where I can utilize that to its fullest potential, right? For me, you and I just went through this in our coaching for my new company, right? I think one of the most effective ways that you can lead generate is by calling your sphere. We've talked about that for a long time. For me, for a couple different factors, it's ineffective. Whether it's a reluctancy to get on the phone, it's a lack of extroversion on my part. Several factors come into play. What we found for myself is most effective is doing the keynote speeches in person or going and doing the podcasts and then following up with a really, really well thought out drip campaign and nurture campaign. So, just to put a bow on that ramble, I think it's important to understand what you're good at and make sure that you identify the activities that suit your genius or try and delegate the ones that don't.
Yeah. So, and I think that's like the amazing part about coaches and their different value that they could bring because not every coach is created the same. Just like every real estate agent or every attorney that you hire, like there's good ones and, there's not so good ones. So, one of the very first coaches I had, obviously in the beginning, you don't know how to filter through yourself. So, one of the first coaches I had was really honing in on me cold, and I was just like doing the activities in like to hit my measurements, my KPIs for the week for my call for accountability, but I hated life and I was like, why am I lead generating through cold calling? I don't want to do this. And I would tell them that and they were like, no, 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 this is what you have to do. Like call this many people and get these many conversations and you'll get a deal. And I'm like, yeah, but it's like a lot of effort for me. And I couldn't really figure out why, right? Because I was like new to the business and real estate at the time. And
Yeah.
then I met another coach and they were like, your genius is talking to people and being in front of people. Like, how can you get in front of people? And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, like, he's like, what do you do now? Where did you get your clients that you currently already have? And I was like, oh, like through networking events. And he was like, do more of that.
Yeah.
Like
Exactly.
scale that. And I was like, oh, so I don't have
Dude,
to
it's
cold call
like
anymore?
it's so true. Like, think about it. I think in one of the last podcasts we talked about when you're doing the right thing for you, when it's in alignment with like who you are, it feels effortless, right? Whereas
Yeah.
the opposite, like we keep bringing up this metaphor of spinning plates, but it literally feels like you're running around trying to spin all these plates at once.
Mm-hmm.
You may be doing the same amount of work in a day, but it can feel crazy. Like it can take a lot more energy from you if you're working on the wrong things or if you're engaging in activities that take energy instead of give you energy. So I love that. And I think that's sort of that's the trick, right? There's not a one size fits all approach. And I know you and I are very big on this with our clients. We need to tailor a solution that suits them, right? That
Yes.
plays to their strengths. And I think that's critical component. Have you ever like had a client where it was really hard to identify maybe what their strengths were? Like, do you have any stories to share about that process?
I think people don't think of it to begin with. And they think that they need to do paid ads to get clients. And that's simply just not the case, right? Like, there's so many ways to get clients without paid anything yet. So I think asking the right questions is super important. Like, how do you connect with people? In the past, like, this isn't your first sales job. Every job has some sort of sales component in it.
Yeah.
So how did you make those connections before? Were they walk-in? Okay, well, where can you go where people are walking to you? There's
Yep.
fairs everywhere and festivals everywhere. Where can you get a table where people are coming up to you? So I think just asking the right questions to clients to get them to think about how they can attract or how they did previously already attract their clients and close them and convert them.
I love that. I love that you brought up asking questions because as coaches, that's 99% of our job, right? But I think as an entrepreneur, as a small business owner, as somebody that's going out on their own for the first time, you should be asking yourself some really hard questions as well. I know Kate is a big fan of journaling. What would you recommend to like a small business owner? I know you and I have had a lot of conversations around this. What would you ask them to journal on to try and sort of narrow down to what they're good at and what those types of activities would be?
Write yourself questions as if you were going to ask somebody else. So imagine that you hired a salesperson for yourself to replace yourself because you hated sales that much,
Hmm.
which entrepreneurship is like 90% sales. But
Yeah.
anyway, let's just say you hired a salesperson.
Hmm.
What questions would you ask them to help them generate leads before you started paying for leads? So when I was running my real estate team, some agents that would come on would want to buy leads. And I was like, I'm not buying leads. There's literally leads sitting in our CRM that you haven't even responded to yet. Until
Right.
you can tackle those leads, nobody's buying any lead.
Yeah.
And we never had to buy leads. Never once did I ever buy leads.
That's
That's
amazing.
wild
Yeah.
because you have
So
everything that you need. You just need to know how to work it.
100%. And you brought up something there that I think is crucial. Entrepreneurship is sales, right? It's like that's the whole name of the game. Now, as you continue to scale, you may be able to stratify and sort of spread out the tasks among people that are highly skilled, more granular, maybe at like marketing or lead generation or lead follow up or maybe operations. But at first, Bubba, it is all you. When you start that
Mm-hmm.
bad boy, you gotta be the entire sales funnel. I think what's important though, I've talked to a lot of folks now. I've been in sales a long time. They think they're not good at sales. And I think, at least in my experience, people aren't good at every type of sales.
Mm-hmm.
There's an approach and a process and a technique, I think, for everyone to have success. Like I said at the kickoff here on the podcast, like I historically have been a very introverted person. Now I'm 32, I got 2 kids and a wife. I've learned to come out of my shell and put on the mask, but it takes a lot of energy from me.
Mhm.
It's not something that I can do naturally. It's an adaptation I've had to gain. So where I've had success is leaning into repeatable sales process approach instead of sort of going in and freestyling it, which is how my old manager at the car dealership would do it. He was so charismatic. He was able to connect with everybody right away.
My
Me, I'm
guy.
yeah, dude, just like you. I was more like Dr. Spock, Mr. Robot. I had to go out there and run through a process. And over time, the more that I did it, I became adept at doing that and like building rapport and stuff. But I think it's key to focus in through those questions that you're going to ask yourself during the journaling process. What are you good at? What do you enjoy? What do you hate? And then build your sales technique and your funnel around those activities until you can get people to come on board to sort of fill in the gaps. We talk a lot
Right.
about that as leaders and as entrepreneurs. It's incredibly important to be honest with ourselves about what we lack in our toolbox and then find people that can bring the tools to sort of fill in the gaps in our own toolbox, right?
Yeah, like the working genius. I love that from Patrick Lencioni. Like he talks about what your geniuses are and what you're
Mhm.
really not great at. You can do, but it takes like the life energy out of you. And that's how you build your team. You fill your empty seats, right, with the other counterparts.
Yeah, 100%. Big fan of Working Genius. It was like I've taken probably a dozen personality assessments over the past 3 or 4 years, and that's one of my favorites for sure.
Mm.
The cool thing is, it's going to tell you,
What are
and
you?
I am a contemplative counselor.
What are your
So,
two working geniuses?
um, discernment and wonder, which I think is why I'm so good at like process improvement, because I sit and I wonder, I'm like, how can I make this better? And then the discernment is, okay, what do we need to change to improve upon it? And then my competency, like the middle ground, the yellow ones for me are the enablement and the implementation. So I'm really good at figuring out what we need to do, and then I'm decent at like inspiring people and teaching people how to do it. And of course, my red ones are like the extreme ideation, like people stuff, way at the front end of the scale, like the Kate Denise of the world.
So what's your two lowest? Is galvanizing is left
No,
and
it's
is
I'm
galvanizing in middle?
galvanizing is towards the right side, so like the implementation side of it. Let's like bring a team together. What's the whole way up at the left hand side? Like
I
I
don't know
think
what you're talking about when you're doing this.
when sorry, he has all the letters like on a spectrum. Um, like ideation. So for me, and we've talked about this historically, I'm a really good counterpuncher. I'm not the greatest at like fighting off the front foot, we'll say. Or if I have to sit down in a room and come up with a brand new novel idea, I'm really good at taking like reference material, like an existing process or a company that's like struggling, and working with somebody, typically the entrepreneur, the CEO, to determine where are we falling short? What do we need to improve? And then my discernment, I'm able to say, okay, well, these are the things that are working, these are the things that need improvement, and then we're able to create a roadmap or a bridge from where they're at to where they want to be with process and system. So
Yeah.
it's just crazy when I took the Working Genius, how it lined up with what I found I'm naturally good at. And any of these personality assessments can be helpful with that, right?
Yes.
Predictive Index, DISC, Keller Williams has a really good one, the KPA. They're all, they tell a story. And just quickly while we're on this, I don't mean to like babble on, but I fell into this trap maybe, I don't know, probably 6, 7 months ago, where everyone kept telling me that I was like a specialist, or I was a strategist and I was like the implementation guy. And what I found is like, yeah, that's one side of my personality. But in order to be good at process improvement, you need to have some creativity and some wonder and some ability to create. And that's where I had this like identity crisis. I'm like, wait, no, I feel like I want to
Oh yeah.
create something, but I'm not supposed to feel this way because I'm a specialist. I'm an operator. I'm an integrator. So please, anybody that's listening to this, when you take these assessments, take them with a grain of salt, because while they're going to tell you a story, I think it's important to do a couple of them and look for the trends, like the patterns that develop.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, this isn't who you are. This is just one little perspective into what you may be good at and may inform some of these business decisions that Kate and I are discussing.
I love the disc because it's just such a quick like identifier, even when you're going on like sales appointments or when you're selling yourself, because you can easily identify like what their profile is and then match it.
Yeah.
So I love it for that. And then I also love when you're hiring people, giving the disc as an assessment before you even get on the phone. So if they're applying for an operations job and they have a low C, like most people probably don't know off the top of the bat, like what the disc is, but if they're a low C, then they're like absolutely not even worth a phone call. So I think Indeed has where you could apply the disc where they have to, if they apply, they have to fill out the disc. It's like a quick assessment.
Hmm.
And it just tells you like this person's a low C. Well, then they're not for the ops person that I'm looking for.
I'm a
Um,
I'm a high C. In case
yeah,
anybody.
no, yeah, no, shocker. I'm a high
So
DI.
yeah, okay, nice. What what would be next, right? So if an entrepreneur journaled on this and they're very clear now on who they are, what they're good at, who they need to bring on the team potentially to like even out the gaps in their skill set, we now understand like what the activities are. What's next? What would be the next step if we're moving up a ladder here in terms of order of operations for a
I don't
brand new
know.
business?
Like, did we talk enough about lead generation? I think it's like 80% lead generation.
So what would you do if you were somebody like me, for example, that does not want to go out and do the networking events necessarily? They'll do it if they have to, but what are if you could just maybe run the spectrum? What are some common lead
Well, let's
generations
talk
that
about
you've
it.
seen?
Yeah, let's talk about what lead generation, like what could make up lead generation.
Hmm.
If you look at like I refer to the KW book all the time, The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, because literally it tells you basically how to run a business, any
Yeah,
business.
fantastic read.
Um, there's marketing, there's advertising, you could do in-person events, you can speak, you can do cold calling, you could do Facebook paid ads, you can do billboards, you could do TV, radio, like
Yeah.
mailers, postcards. There's a million. And then if you don't have money, your paid marketing's out. So then it's just you.
Yep.
And then it's, do you cold call and learn scripts or do you get out in front of people? I chose to get out in front of people. And then you have to identify where is my target audience. So getting out in front of people haphazardly is like not beneficial for literally anybody, right? Where can you go where your target audience is and make everything purposeful? And when I
Boom.
did that, everything changed. Like I
Boom. Yeah.
literally, right, I had my license when I was 24 years old. So most of the people my age weren't buying houses. But you know who was buying houses? Their parents. So I would go to the bar, their parents would be there. We're from a really small town. Their parents would be there and I would obviously know them. And what do people talk about? Real estate all the time, right? And they
Hmm.
knew I was in real estate because I was posting on social media. So they had that mind share already. I wasn't
Yeah.
going out saying, "Hey, do you want to buy a house?" No, they were saying, "Hey, Kate, how's the real estate market?" Because everybody wants to know.
Yeah.
And they knew because of the mind share that they gained from me posting on Facebook. And
Love that.
then I just listened to people. And when they said, well, when my daughter graduates, my second daughter, because, I would be friends with their older daughter, when their second daughter graduates next year, we're going to think about moving to South Carolina. I would literally go home the next morning, wake up, because I was hungover, right? I would wake up, go in the CRM and put that. And I would put a reminder in 6 months to follow up with that. Everything was purposeful from there on out.
I
And
think
that became
I
my
think
lead generation.
you hit on something super important there. And actually, I don't know how I missed this when I was babbling on earlier, but I think it's important to understand where the right people are, right? There's this whole idea of, activity doesn't necessarily mean that you have productivity, right?
Mm-hmm.
In order to be like productive, we need to make sure we're doing the right activities at the right time with the right level of intentionality. So, I think that's huge. I mean, for me, I've been in sales a long time. I've worked with a lot of high level salespeople. Not many of them are running their own business. So while my sphere is important, because like you said, you never know when you can get a referral opportunity. What I've had to work really hard to do in my business is figure out where are those honey holes, right? Where are the fishing ponds at where I can go and find the right people. Where are the folks that want to spend money on a coach and have a business and they're looking to get into an entrepreneurial position? So I think it's important to know where your people are at, what they are into, and what problems do they have, most importantly, because then how
Yeah.
can you offer a solution to those people that creates value, right? And allows them to sort of have that light bulb go off and say, hey, that can solve the problem that I'm experiencing.
So I love doing affiliate relationships. Like, I want my effort to be tenfold with whatever I do. So what you're talking about is identifying your avatar, right? Like your target audience, who you want to work with. So like one of the best activities that I've done is a coach had me literally like draw my ideal client.
Like a picture,
this
like
is
a portrait.
this is out of real estate. This is for coaching. Um, is it male? Is it female? Do they have long hair? Do they have short hair? Where do they hang out? What do they do with their spare time? What are their hobbies? Do they have a family? Are they single? Are they living in the city? Are they living in the suburbs? Like literally, what do they wear?
Mm,
And then once you can identify that, you can start to go and be in those places.
mm,
And then affiliate relationships is like tenfolding that, right? It's like who's already in front of them at scale. So, for example, 67% of my business before was referral. It wasn't one by one referral. It was affiliates that I set up with, affiliate relationships, which is just like an agreement basically where I would give somebody a referral fee for sending me their clients at scale,
yeah.
was an insurance company, a
Mm,
local insurance company in town. I did not know them. I was introduced to them by another acquaintance and we built rapport. They loved me and I loved them. I sent them all my referrals for insurance. They sent me all of their referrals for anybody that passed away and their home was vacant and they needed to sell.
wow,
Phenomenal. I got like 20 deals a year from them.
that's great.
So then in coaching or whatever your business is, how can you recreate that? So for coaching, you do coaching for operations, right? You're like a fractional CO. Where can you go where your ideal target audience is, which is who? An entrepreneur that is looking to scale, that needs to build out systems and processes to scale to the next level.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, like, where are they at scale, not one by one? Because who has time for one by one?
Yeah, and that's exactly the puzzle that we've been working to solve for me, right? So it's existing um, relationships that I've built over the past 2 years, trying to leverage those, right? We've been part through the companies that I've worked for of some of the biggest real estate masterminds in the country. And I think just trying to leverage those relationships, I know you've done a really good job for me of pointing me in the right direction and just trying to lean on the people that I know already that are in front of those folks. So for me being sort of new to the industry, very new to coaching, I think it's incredibly important. I love the idea of affiliate relationships, by the way. Leverage the relationships that you've been able to build thus far to try and earn new relationships. It's almost like climbing up a ladder or climbing like a ropes course. You keep taking these relationships and building new ones to climb your way to where you want your or where you think your clients are at.
And then systematically doing it, because
Yeah.
once you get to a certain scale, or even in the beginning, honestly, like I lose track after 10 people in front of my face. Like I think most people do, honestly. Like, how do you truly keep good rapport building and front of face and mind share in more than 10 people? Like, you can't do that manually. You have to
Yeah.
start to scale out and do it systematically. So, how do you think you do that?
Yeah, I mean, just speaking my language now at this point. So it's exactly what I love is consistency. How can we be disciplined to a process that will yield consistent, predictable results? That's the core question that we always ask with
Yeah.
any sort of client or anyone that's looking to establish any sort of system, which is like I've been seeing this everywhere lately. Like system is a big buzzword, but what's it mean? Really, what is a system? And I think before we even go down
Hmm.
the path, how do you build one? It's like let's identify what that is. Well, it's almost like you need to start from the bottom. Really, what you have is an outcome that you want, right? From that outcome, you're going to have something that works, activities that work, and activities that don't. What we're going to do over time is we're going to pay attention to what worked. What did we get a lot of results from? Because that now becomes,
Right.
as we use Pareto's principle, that becomes our 20%. You're going to get 80% of your results from 20% of your efforts. Well,
Yep.
that's our new, we're going to shift everything into that. And then we build a standard operating procedure. So step one is to get to a system, we need to have a standard operating procedure. Then you're going to have a couple things that
That's
work.
so boring to me, by the way.
It is boring. I'm going to try and make this as quick as possible because I'm putting the audience to sleep right now. But it's like building blocks, right? You're going to have several SOPs that you put together. That's a playbook.
Yeah.
Then you're going to have a couple different playbooks you put together, and this is now a process. And once you have a few processes, now we have a system.
Yes. This is like every entrepreneur's nightmare, by the way.
This is where I really like I've identified that, and I want to help because everybody wants a system and they want a
Oh my
process.
God, I have such a good referral for you.
Oh, I'll take it. Shoot me a text.
There's one or two people that there's definitely one. I think there's two people that build out systems and processes for entrepreneurs.
There we go. I'm on.
Okay, remind me after this.
So where was I going with that? Right. So now we know like what a system is, right? And I think that's really where you need to start. And I think you need to ask yourself those questions. You can't just jump into a system, a repeatable system and process for, lead generation. You need to know all these questions on the front end is what has worked, what hasn't, so on and so forth. And I think from that point, it starts with tools are incredibly important. So for me, I'm a big fan of having some sort of, whether it's a CRM that you pay money for or a Google sheet that you use, some sort of place that you can get it all out of your head. Because you're right. Once you get to a certain amount of people, you can't remember them all, right? So for me, I'm a big fan of CRMs, which is a customer relationship manager, getting the information into that system, taking really, really thorough notes on their life, their skill set, their business, their personality style. As you get to know them, put everything in your CRM so that when you follow up in 6 months, it's like you've maintained the relationship. There's no lost ground. You don't need to try and recall everything that you learned at the bar in Tampa, Florida, at your last networking event, right? With this person, it's all there in the CRM.
Yeah.
And then from there, we build out campaigns. How can we stay top of mind? How can we stay front and center in their world, whether it's daily, weekly, monthly, whatever campaign probably suits the situation best based on what stage of the buying process they're in? How can we stay in front of that person that we've identified as our avatar? How can we do it consistently so that we'll yield the outcome that we want? In a nutshell, that's really what a system is and the approach that I would take to make sure that we can accomplish that.
Yeah, I love that. So I would take those notes that you're referring to, like you would go back in your CRM, and I would take those notes, and that's what I would use to follow up with people. So I maybe not call them, but maybe I would text them and say like, "Hey, how's your daughter doing in school?" Or I would send them a Facebook message. Or the next time that I saw them at the bar, for example, now that we're going back 10 years, as an example, I would pull up, like maybe I forgot their husband's name, right? So I would pull their CRM up on my phone and I would be like, oh, it's Tom. Hey, Kathy and Tom, like, how's your daughter doing? Samantha, like, and they'd be like, oh my God, like, Kate's so nice because she remembered everything about me. Kind of. I'm just like really systematic in my approach and I have it all written down.
The word that keeps coming to mind is leverage, right? So
Yeah.
one of the things that you can leverage is technology. And all you're doing is you're taking past Kate's knowledge, storing it in a container so that future Kate can reach in and pull it out and impress the client and say, look, I remember your husband's name, or I remember that Timmy plays in a T-ball league May through September. It means a lot because John Maxwell famously has, always said, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Exactly. And that's a great way to go above and beyond in terms of a customer experience and set yourself apart from the run and gun, shoot from the hip entrepreneur that's trying to remember everything.
Especially then, like everybody's a realtor. And who wants to work with a 24-year-old who's a realtor? So the other thing, I talked about this the other day with someone. The other thing that I did really well, because someone was asking me, they want to build out their real estate investment company off of referrals, off of a referral base. And, how do you get your business 67% of it to be referral? And so in that 67%, there was different buckets that made up referrals, right? There was like the affiliates, that was like the insurance company that I told you about. There
Mhm.
was referrals from past clients, and then there was referrals from like Sphere, and there was referrals from other agents, agent to agent, right? Because not
Mhm.
everybody's licensed in the states that I was licensed in.
Yeah.
So I would go to these conferences, and this is for anybody in any industry, right? Like you're in real estate invest or you're in coaching and you go to another conference in San Diego. Not everybody in maybe not somebody that they know in San Diego does COO coaching, so they're going to refer to you as another coach, right? Another
Mhm.
coach could refer you. So coaches could be a really good referral network for you. Other coaches that don't coach what you coach.
Yeah, totally. That's what I'm finding in my business, like 100%, leveraging relationships I have with other coaches.
Right. Like I don't want to coach operations and I don't want to be a fractional COO, but like, oh, I know Kyle that does. So when I'm in this conference in San Diego, I think of Kyle because that's your one thing that you do. So how do you stay top of mind and mind share with those people, those coaches at the conference in San Diego? So I would set up a specific campaign for agent to agent referral or coach to coach referral. And I would just build mind share through that. So if
Love
there was
that.
a reoccurring conference in San Diego for coaches, like the one I just made up, um, I would set a campaign, and it wouldn't be like fancy with pictures, right? Because number one, I'm a high D, and I don't want I want it to be real, like
Yeah.
I want them to think that I'm actually emailing them.
Yeah, yeah.
So it would be like two sentences, like, "Hey, I'm so excited for the conference coming up. Hope to see you there." And it would go out like 3 weeks before the conference. Even if they did, even if I didn't know they were going, I just knew they previously have been at this conference. So I was just gaining touches around this event that I didn't even create. And then one would go out the week of the conference. "Hey, I hope to see you there. Reach out to me if you have free time so we can meet up for coffee." They think it's me.
Yeah.
Then I email while I'm there. "Hey, I'm here. Hope to see you. Sorry if we miss each other. No big deal."
Yeah.
And then 2 more times after, "My notes from the conference, and sorry if I missed you," or "Great seeing you."
I love that. I think one
I got
important
so
thing
many
that
referrals from it across the country.
I believe it. Think about what you're doing. Like you're getting hyper specific on your audience for the messaging, which, now that we're sort of we've lived in marketing land for a while, but that's a big piece of marketing in general, right?
Mhm.
Is making sure that you're getting the right message in front of the right people, because I'm probably going to have different messaging for a repeat client than I am for, a
Oh, yeah.
cold business owner that I just met for the first time, or for you, these folks, these other coaches, I'm going to speak to differently than maybe my Aunt Susie at Christmas dinner. It's going to be different messaging, and I love that you catered your nurture campaigns to those folks. And I think that's something that's incredibly overlooked. I know in my CRM right now, I have 7 different campaigns that I can run based on how someone found me, what links they clicked on my website, what type of services they're interested in, how hot are they, what stage are they in terms of the buying process. You
Yep.
want to make sure that you're catering your messaging to where they're at.
Exactly. You can't speak to every lead the same. You can't treat every lead the same. Every lead should be talked to and treated differently in the sequence of the communication and the communication itself. If I put all of those realtors that I knew on a mass email drip with like pictures and graphics and it was like a newsletter, like unsubscribe, annoying. I thought we were friends. Like literally. So I just used emotional intelligence.
Love that. Okay. So we've talked a lot about lead gen now.
What else do you want to move to?
What do we what do we teach somebody once they get some leads rolling in? So now we've identified who our avatar is. We have some strategies to find
We're building like a GPS.
yeah, finding the lead. Yeah. And so like they start coming in. I actually love that. Yeah, this is like that's what the title of this should be called. Like
Maybe
small
not.
business.
Maybe we take it away from GPS. We're building a one-page business plan.
There's somebody out there though. It's like I think you and I take that for granted sometimes. Like there's someone out there that's going to listen to this and for the first time hear some of these things, and it's going to be like, holy moly, that could like make a big difference.
Yeah.
What do they do? They got leads coming in now, and maybe they did set up a CRM, and they got that first notification on their phone, like ding, someone responded to my lead magnet. What's next?
Cool. Yeah. So now you need to convert the lead, right?
Yep.
So you think about a sales funnel, You do all of your lead generating activities, you get people into your lead. Now you need to convert them. So you need to show the value in exchange for the money that you're asking. So I like scripts because it gives you like a framework. I do not read scripts though when I'm on the phone.
Yeah, and I think you and I are in the same boat here. I even hate the word script because, like, to me, a script is very much you are reading down through word by word. I think framework is really what I've always used is you need to have a repeatable sales process, and each
Yeah.
step of the process you want to have some go to. They're almost like guideposts along the way. You want to make sure you hit on, like in your introduction, for example, like a solid 3 name greeting. You want to make sure that we set expectations. As we move into like a build trust phase, we want to make sure we're finding pain and motivation and being vulnerable and transparent. There's things that we always want to do, but I wouldn't necessarily say it the same exact way to you versus my 8-year-old son sitting over here in the corner of the room. Like, it's the people we're going to need to be communicated with two completely different ways.
Different. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that's what's most important is understanding, hey, we need to have a process, but we can't have a script that we like adhere to religiously.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be able to be a little bit flexible. And I think in reality, the goal of even having a process is to convert the lead, and the aim of any good sales conversation is to identify the problem that they're experiencing that you can solve, and you can now act as a guide to build them a bridge from where they're at to where they want to be, and your
Yeah.
solution ends up being the bridge. For me, it's fractional COO consulting, small business coaching. For someone else, it may be something different, but identifying what their specific problem is, because if we're trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist, we're going to seem disingenuous. We're going to seem overly eager. It needs to be a problem that they've let you know they're experiencing. So the
And
goal
then
of your
how do you
process,
find them? You ask questions. You find the
exactly. And I was
problem
going
by
to say
asking questions.
exactly that. You like open-ended questions. I mean, we could go into a whole. We got friends that are really good at teaching sales, so I'm not even going to try and do it.
Yeah.
Do it,
Let's
but
leave
it's
it to
like
them.
they would tell you and have taught me over time that you should speak 20 or 30% of the time, and the client should speak 60 or 70% of the time. And really the way that we do that is by asking really well thought out open-ended questions, being neutrally curious about them.
Yeah.
You want to get the no. Like, the point of this is to get a no. You need to find where that objection is so that we can try and overcome it and provide our product offering as a solution to the problem. That's how you build value.
Yeah, I agree. And using those personality assessments like the DISC really quick, I'll use that and tie that back into the sales process. Like, if you can identify that they're a high C, I know that I need to walk through, like, I roll my eyes because I'm not. So I know that I need to walk through like the outline of what it's going to be and the details of the timing and like when it's going to occur, how it's going to occur, like all the things. If there's going to be paperwork needing to be signed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Where like as a high D, like that's like direct, et cetera. Like a high D is like, when do I start? Like literally just tell me the very minimum detail on like the absolute thing that I need to know right now.
Mhm.
And so you change once you can identify that with the other person, you change how you deliver your messaging. So that's again, like I like the script as a framework, but the script
Mhm.
doesn't work 100% of the time for everybody because you need to identify how to change it for who you're talking to so you can match them.
100%. I think it's so important to understand their communication style. And that's where I think you got to zoom out, because I think sometimes, especially as newer entrepreneurs, we get excited like, oh my God, someone's interested in talking to me, right? And you get out, you start seeing money signs. It's like, I got a mortgage to pay this month. But in
Mhm.
reality, we need to slow down and understand, how did they come to find us, right? Because sometimes the marketing channel will inform what type of client we're working with. What's their motivation level? What's their background? How did they find us? If it's someone that saw a commercial on a TV versus someone that was on our website and watched all of our marketing collateral,
Mhm.
they're two very different levels of curiosity and enlightenment, right?
Mhm.
So catering your messaging and your approach to them is super important. Like for me, our first 2 coaching calls, I kept getting like into the tactical, because that's where I live. Like, I want to know how something works. Why does it work that way? What are the steps that I need to do? Whereas somebody like you, it may be a little bit different. Like, yep, okay, that's going to solve my problem. What are the next 3 steps? How do we get started? When's the first call?
Yeah.
For me, I got like 18 other things I need to know first. So
Before you can
ve-
move. Yeah.
very, very important. I love that you brought that up. Um, Ideally, right? So this conversation goes really well, and we identify a problem,
That's
and we
right.
can
So
provide.
wait, on the appointment, there's either two outcomes, a no
Yep.
or a yes. And then like,
Mhm.
then what bucket do they fall in? So
Yep.
go ahead.
No, that's exactly what I was going to get to, right? So like if something goes really well and we sign them up, that we're going to have one pathway now, right? In terms of a process map, that's going to lead to one section of results. And if they say no, uh, what do we do with them then, right? Obviously, they were interested enough at some point to reach out to us and we attended the appointment. How can we stay in front of them? Because a no is typically not a no forever. Sometimes it may be, but a lot of times it's a hey, just not right now. We haven't done a great enough job of building value, or maybe there just is
That's right.
a condition that we can't overcome. We need to stay in front of them still.
So off topic, but my mom was like top saleswoman in like the country over and over again for whatever she sold back in the day.
Hey, it's like in the blood.
I know. So was my father. Anyway. Um and she always says to me, a no is just because they don't know enough value yet. You need to keep going.
100%. You like selling starts at the first no, by the way. Like 100%. Like if you think having a really good conversation with someone, again, sort of off topic, but if you think having a great conversation with someone where there's no impediment and there's no obstacles and you both feel good at the end, I'll tell you one thing that's not going to happen. You're not going to sign that person up.
Yeah.
Like you have to be searching for that conflict. It's really, really important. Not conflict in like that you're yelling at each other, but conflict in terms of, hey, there's a roadblock that we need to overcome. Because if they sign up or they go to the next step, your fallout rate is going to be crazy. If you haven't already figured out what the objection is, it's going to pop out, and now it's going to pop out in a domain that you don't have control over, right? It's better to get it out into the open when you have them on the phone, and you can control the narrative somewhat. So again, not to like get into the weeds of sales, we have folks that can do that at a very high level. Pete and I just have happened to have some success in that arena, but incredibly important that we're paying attention to the fact that a no now is not a no forever. How do we
Yeah.
stay in front of them?
No, like ever, ever, ever. You don't stop communicating with the lead until they're dead.
Yeah, yeah.
Literally. They should never be out of your CRM getting some sort of drip. Now, again, you treat them differently. Like I used to rate them like ABC, just in my
Mhm.
brain, but most people rate it like hot, warm, cold. I could literally talk for hours about lead generation and how to treat a lead, but I'll refrain. Um, anyway, put them on a freaking drip sequence and follow up with them when you think it's right.
This is the value of a really good CRM as well, right? Instead of having to like, because you only have so much bandwidth, right? So you can't be thinking about all these new people, inbound leads, the outbound marketing efforts, and then also nurturing like existing leads in your system. So
Yeah.
that's where having a CRM that you can automate, again, leveraging technology. And if you've gotten to the point in your business where you can leverage people, get someone on the team that specializes in that or that you can train to be really good at following a process and be task oriented to do the follow up for you.
And listen, that's like those people you put on tasks and remind yourself to follow up with them appropriately, time sequence speaking. Those become your like people ask me what do you do during lead generation time? If I spend an hour a day on lead gen, what do you do? That you
Yeah.
have a CRM that you've given yourselves tasks for. Like you've identified who you should be calling when. And every morning you wake up and you do those tasks. That's your 20% that's going to give you your 80% results.
Yeah. Who would you rather talk to? Someone that you've spoken to and have indoctrinated somewhat and you understand what they're looking to go through and they understand what you offer, or someone completely new that you have to walk the whole way through the process? Like, yeah, you should be starting ideally starting every day with cleanup in the CRM. What are my tasks that are firing for each lead that we have existing in there?
Sales, revenue first
Exactly.
position.
That's
Get
like
it.
the low hanging fruit. And I know it's like not the shiny object, like ding, you get the notification, the little red circle on your iPhone that says you got a new lead in your CRM and you want to follow up with them. That's important. Don't overlook the leads that we've already talked to in our CRM.
Yeah. Harvard did a really good lead study or has done a really good lead study a couple of years in a row. And I've shared this with multiple teams that I've coached through. 7 to 12 times it takes follow up to convert a lead. And that doesn't need to mean it's two-way conversation, whether it's text, phone call, email, social media, communication, whatever. It's 7 to 12 times. So how are you doing that? You're doing it in the morning through your tasks.
Love
Okay,
that.
so we can have a whole show just on lead generation. Um, maybe we should.
It's important. It's important, no doubt about it.
So if they're
What
a no, they go in this bucket and you follow up with them at another time to convert them. And if you don't convert them, you ask for a referral, right? Okay, moving on. And then the other bucket is how can you deliver as much value, especially to your first couple of clients? You should be doing everything that you possibly can to over deliver so you can build that rapport and referral network from them.
Yeah, I would call this part of the funnel like fulfillment, right? Like, how are we going to
Yeah.
fulfill on that promise that we made that built enough value to get them to sign up for our services? And this is where I get like real nerdy about it, because one of the things that I love most is over delivering for a client. You want to talk about the absolute best way to collect leads. It's to get referrals from people that you've already done business with. Those are the
100%.
folks those are the folks that you need to do basically
Nothing.
zero, right? You're already going to have a rapport established. You're already going to have trust, right? It's very much like, hey, Aunt Susie referred me to you, said you did a great job with, their business. I'd love to chat with you and see how you can help me out with my operations or my sales or my mindset, whatever it is, right? Insert your product here. I think those are the folks that we need to make sure that the people that sign up, let's not, put them into like a we'll do our one call a week and move on. How can we almost to an unreasonable degree deliver on the promise that we made, right? And
Hmm.
I think that comes from really thoroughly understanding what they're dealing with and curating sort of a solution for them, and making sure that each week we are very intentional, showing them how much we care, making sure that we follow through on the promises that we make. Don't be that business owner that says, yeah, I'm going to do, a call a week on Wednesday at 10 a.m. and the call always ends up being Wednesday at 4 or Thursday at 10:30 because you had to push them back. Make sure that we're following through on the commitments that we've made. I think that with just really having a product that solves their problem is going to get you referrals down the road, which are much easier to convert.
Yeah, I totally agree.
What
What else
else?
happens next?
So I think, go ahead.
No, what do you think?
Well, I mean, you could go a couple different directions. I mean, you could nerd out about um, a couple things here, but what happens once someone has gone through the life cycle of a product? Are we never going to follow up with them again? What are we going to do with
Ooh,
somebody
what
that
do you
has
mean? Repeat clients?
exactly? How can we work a product ladder? How can we keep them in our ecosystem? I think that's a super important thing to touch on, because I've seen this with a lot of organizations. It's like one and done. And if you're always trying to look for a new customer and start over, you're going to bash your skull against the wall someday. It's so much easier to cultivate existing clients and move them to another stage in your product ladder.
Yeah. I love this. Like I literally love the lead generation model. Um because it's like kind of complex. It's all about relationships and it makes everybody's business easier if they do it correctly.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
So after a lead, um after you convert the lead, you close the lead, you deliver and give value and deliver and fulfillment and all of that on the client. Your contract or relationship with them has come to an end. If they don't renew, then again, like what else, like you're talking about the value ladder, what else can they naturally just go into? So for example, you do COO coaching, right? So if you're doing a one-on-one package with them for, let's just say 6 months,
Mhm.
what can they naturally go into after that where maybe they don't need you because they've hired somebody full time, but they still want to keep you in the ecosystem because you helped the COO that they just hired full time build out everything in their company.
Yeah. So I know I talk about this a lot. I love visualizing things, right? Like a picture. And if you think about your product ladder, people are going to come into your company or your ecosystem, right, at different levels
Hmm.
on the ladder. in a perfect world, we start everyone at the bottom and we work them up there. But I've had people that have hit me up already in the past month and a half, and they just want my top end service, which is fractional COO. Well, what happens after that runs out? Either I re up fractional COO or I get a referral or they're gone. No, we can also move them back down the product ladder, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that may be, hey, maybe you don't need as intensive consulting right now, now that we've replaced me in your business, but how about I stay on as a mentor to that new COO for another 6 months? Or perhaps it's, hey, I know you mentioned that your sales team potentially needs some help. Maybe we can work out a way to give them some ongoing training in a group sense.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's just a video library. You can create a course. This is like a new hot thing that Kate and I have been talking about recently. Maybe you have a library of self-paced modules that you can enroll them in to keep them in your family, because at the end of the day, being top of mind, the best way to do that is to be doing business with somebody.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of like my personal opinion on this topic for you specifically. I like the group weekly call that
Yeah.
people like the entrepreneur can now send their COO, because like I don't want to sit there and talk about systems and processes even though I know we need it and I know it should be built out and all the things. I just want to send the COO that I just hired to you weekly to make sure that they're getting what they need.
Yeah, 100%. And like you hit the nail on the head really if you think about it, because the entrepreneur hires me to help build the systems out. We find someone to replace me. Well, they struggled with it in the first place, so they're probably not
Mhm.
the best person to train them and hold them accountable on an ongoing basis. Yeah, I love it. I mean, it's something that you need to think through as an entrepreneur: is how can we retain people inside of our little ecosystem by having some sort of product ladder and multiple offerings.
And then if not, like if they don't move up and down the value ladder to another product that you offer, service that you offer, you need to still stay in front of them and top of mind for referrals or
Yeah,
repeat business down the road. So let's say that the entrepreneur fires his COO in a year. Who's he going to call instantly to fill that role? You, 110% you,
right.
until he finds another permanent full-time COO.
Yeah,
So how is he remembering that you exist and you're still for sale in your services? So it
yeah.
comes back
By our
to
nurture campaign. Yeah,
a nurture campaign, exactly, specifically made for clients that you've already served. Because
yes.
again, you have to speak to everybody differently. Because as soon as somebody knows that they're on a mass newsletter or mass email, like it's just like,
Yeah, and I think making people aware of changes in your business too, like you're going to get to know someone. Now, I want to be careful not to get too like micro level with like coaching or consulting businesses, because you this may is actually really easy for somebody that sells a product, right? Because they may need that product again. So subscription service is something that we overlooked. Like you could try and work them to sign them up on a subscription so they get your product monthly if they see value in it. But I think in general, letting someone know changes in your business, they want to know about you if you've built a relationship. So new products that you roll out, I think, are really important. For me, as I continue to build out my product offering, best believe anybody that I'm already doing business with or have done business with is going to know about that, because in terms of referrals, they know that I can do a good job and I can deliver on my solutions that I have in my value offering. They're going to refer people to me because now I can maybe offer value to someone in their sphere that maybe didn't need the fractional COO service, but they could
yeah,
really benefit from like a weekly group call or like a monthly um, sales training or something, right? Whatever it ends up being. So I think it's important that we stay in front of them and we cater the messaging to them and we don't forget about them, because at the end of the day, those are your most valuable assets.
yeah, absolutely. Referrals should make up a majority of your business. Um, Okay, so did we hit the end of our one-page business plan?
It depends on like how granular you want to go. I mean, you could go into like cash flow and cash management and all that stuff. But yeah, I think in general, like the sales funnel, we've done a great job talking through lead gen, conversion, fulfillment, follow up, referral generation. What else?
I think the third, like if we put it in three buckets, right? The first is like lead generation, how you're going to lead generation. The second bucket is like how you're going to fulfill and really build out like a great customer experience. Um, and then the third bucket in my mind would be like systems and processes. So once you have a blueprint of what's working. Even if you have like 3 clients that have gone through the process, you sort of can see it being built as you go, because you can't build anything first. If you do, you're just like wasting your time. So once you have like a couple, 1 or 2, 3 clients go through the process, you've created it, you've taken notes. The third bucket I would put as like building out those systems. So it kind of like works for itself. For the next client, it could be easier. Anything that you do repeatedly should be so I'm on some automation.
Yeah, this is like where maybe I was like too proactive in the beginning when I explained like what a system is, but this is the exact moment where once something has worked, this is where now we want to figure out why, right? We want to do some sort of after action report. What went really well? What can we improve upon? I believe in a process improvement cycle called PDCA. So it's plan, do, check, adjust. Again, like I know this is super boring for a lot of folks, but after something's gone well, we need to go back and figure out why and how can we improve upon it and make sure that we get predictable results. That's where having the SOPs that lead to the playbooks, that lead to the processes, that lead to the systems are super important. We almost want to think about our business as a machine that
Yeah.
can churn out leads, that can convert them, that can fulfill, that can produce referrals on the back end, wash, rinse, repeat.
Yeah.
As a business owner, we need to make sure that we're delegating and pushing all of that 80% work down so that we can free ourselves to focus on the most important 20%. That's not always and forever going to be lead generation or fulfillment or operations. It all comes back to what are you great at? And as we continue to scale, we get revenue coming in, we install systems, we can start to leverage people. And I think
Right.
that's where you can really start to take off as an entrepreneur. How can we delegate, empower, inspire, and get others to do a lot of the 80% work for us? That's really, I think, an entire call in itself. But there's a lot of magic there once you get to that point.
Yeah, I agree. And once you can learn to give up the control, and then that's like a mindset thing where you can leverage people, um, because other people can, like, I love hiring smarter people than me. Like, I'm good with saying, like, I'm not great at that. Who's better? And like giving it to them. But it took me a long time to get there mentally.
It's so hard. I just did a reel about it the other day on my Instagram. It's like one of the most common leadership myths is that as leaders we need to like be the best at everything or we need to have all the answers. Dude, like where I started to take off my leadership careers when I started being very vulnerable and transparent about my shortcomings, and it almost attracted people to me that could help me with those things, right? And by showing how much I care, by getting to know them, by leading to the whole person, I was able to get them on my team, empower them to do the tasks, wash, rinse, repeat. Again, I brought more people in and we continue to stratify to the point where like as a business owner, if you've done a great job of this, you almost can do the first 10%. The middle, there's just like the ideation and maybe the empowerment phase, right? The explanation of sharing the vision and the intent. You let the middle 80% be done by people that are better than you at it or that have more capacity to handle it. And then you come in and do the last 10%, which would be like the quality control, making sure that we're fulfilling to the best of our degree or the best of our ability. I think Dan Martell talks about in his book, Buy Back Your Time. It's the 10-80-10 principle. So I think that could be really effective if you do a really good job of delegating and building a team to fill in your gaps as a leader. It
Yeah.
allows you to be involved in the areas that you bring the most impact, which is typically the very beginning and the very end.
Yeah, no, I love systems because it does give you that predictability. And I can say, I can hire somebody on and I can say, here, follow the system and process. It's just like boring to talk about and it's boring to build out, even though in my brain, I have like this engineering side of my brain that actually is very active. And like, I know exactly how it should look. It's just like, I'm not the person to sit there and build it out.
Well, Kate, if I could tell you that I can make you an extra $1 million next year by installing some of these systems, now it becomes exciting, right?
Yes,
That's I think that's where a lot of
very.
people they overlook that. Like, yeah, it's not the most exciting thing in the world to do. And it takes a lot of time at the computer or at the table with a notepad thinking through it. But the results that you can gain for your company, for your staff, for you as a person are exponential compared to what you can do without them.
Yeah, I agree because you can just leverage your time to do all of those activities that you already know that work and like 10x it. which means the results 10x as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a great topic to get into. I'd love to talk more at some point about leadership, delegation, and building systems around that to scale your company. I mean, I know it's not the most exciting thing in the world, but it is the most overlooked thing I think for new entrepreneurs. Is okay, I can get a business to $3 or $4 million in revenue, but I've been here now for 2 or 3 years. How can I break through this ceiling? The answer is almost always, what haven't you systematized and automated yet?
It's interesting you say that because somebody asked me the other day they want to, I forget, double their business next year. Let's just say their goal was, and they asked me what like they want me to coach them to do that, and they asked me what the first system they can put in place was.
Ooh,
I don't believe it's a system though.
what would
Yet.
you tell them?
I don't believe it's a system yet for them anyway. I think the biggest thing blocking them is their belief that they can do it.
Ooh, man. We talked about this last week on the call, right? Before we earn the right to even talk about leadership or business or systems, what's the work before the work? And I think that mindset and removing limiting beliefs is like crucial. Not to open up like a whole nother pathway that we can go down here, but that's
Yeah.
Kate's jam there. I know that that's where I've personally experienced the most growth over the past 6 months for sure.
And I think everybody's different, but them specifically, because sometimes it is just like literally like, what can you systematize? Like me, when I first got the coach, and he was like, well, what can you systematize that's already working? And I was like, oh, I get it.
Hmm.
Yeah. And then that was the end of that story, literally. So that's our one page. That's the end of our 1-page business plan for beginners.
Love it. That was good stuff.
Cool.